She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. In your fragile skull, I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know. And she's got me living in a chemical love, and I try to find the strength to know she comes back to me again. I'm gonna come up from my hiding place, see if I can find.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me for another coffee and crime time, probably my last video of September, because now I am working on getting Halloween videos recorded, which starts October 1st. So today's case brings us back to Salida, Colorado, where Suzanne Morphew recently disappeared from, but we are going further back. 40 years to be exact, to June 12th, 1980, and we're going to talk about the disappearance of another woman, wife, and mother, 32-year-old Beverly England. Beverly was married to Dale England, a teacher at Kesner Junior High School in Salida. Together, Beverly and Dale had 2 children, 8-year-old Kale and 5-year-old Brisha. But things are not always as they appear from the outside, as we have discovered in so many cases. Beverly was allegedly having an affair with a man named Stephen Abbiata, a man who was also married with 1 son and another on the way. His wife, Mitzi Abbiata, was 7 months pregnant on the morning of June 12th when Beverly asked a friend of hers, a woman named Kathy Smith, if she could watch Brisha and Kale for a few hours while she met with another woman at Riverside Park. Kathy was a friend from church, and her kids often played with the England children, so this was not out of the ordinary, but what Kathy did find disturbing was the woman Beverly was planning on meeting that day was Mitzi Abbiata, the wife of the man Beverly was having an affair with. Kathy felt that this was a bad idea and tried to convince Beverly not to go, but Beverly told Kathy that she needed to do this. She was planning on ending the affair, and she had to see it through. Perhaps she was feeling guilty as Mitzi's due date drew closer. Perhaps she'd realized that this thing with Stephen Abbiata was never going to go anywhere. Either way, she left that morning with the intention of telling Mitzi that it was over, but Beverly England would never be seen again. Before we dive into the details, let's have a quick word from the sponsor of today's video, Magellan TV. Magellan TV is a new kind of documentary streaming service created by those who know best what makes a truly compelling and riveting documentary film. Filmmakers themselves. I know many of you have already signed up and are currently enjoying all that Magellan TV has to offer, and many of you are planning to try them out as well. And for you, I have an amazing recommendation. It's called Night Terror: The Search for the Truth, and it tells the story of a double murder in Cape Town, South Africa. The 2 men, the 2 victims, Brett Golden and Richard Bloom, were close friends, both in their 20s, and both were gay when their lives were snuffed out, and they were found murdered execution style. It's a quick watch with a good amount of information, and it made me really want to dig deeper into the case and learn as much as I could. And that is really the truly amazing thing about Magellan TV. I have stumbled upon documentaries that I've never seen anywhere else, and they capture my attention from start to finish. Magellan TV shares your passion for gripping true stories, and they continue to scour the globe for documentaries with the most dramatic imagery, the most cutting-edge subjects, and authentic insight from the world's top historians, scientists, and explorers. They believe that television should be both entertaining and educational. That is what makes Magellan Magellan TV, television worth watching. They currently have over 2,000 documentary films and series available, and they add more every single week. Magellan TV is available anytime, anywhere. You can watch it on your smartphone, tablet, smart TV, or your laptop computer. You can start a film on your smartphone while you're washing the dishes and finish it later once you're in bed, cozy. Magellan TV is offering viewers of this channel the opportunity to explore everything they have to offer with a 1-month free trial. All you have to do is click the link in the description box below and start watching. There's no contracts, no strings attached. You can cancel anytime you like, but I definitely don't think you're going to want to once you see all the cool documentaries on there. Thank you so much to Magellan TV for sponsoring this video, and thank you as always to all of you out there who understand that sponsors are essential to keep this channel going so I can continue bringing you content. Let's jump right into the video. Okay, so Beverly drops her 2 children off to her friend Kathy on the morning of June 12th, 1980. And she tells Kathy where she's going and who she's meeting, which was very smart of her in my opinion, because usually when there's things like extramarital affairs involved, people try to hide this sort of stuff from their friends and their family, but maybe she did sense there was an element of danger there, an element of danger in what she was about to do. She told Kathy she'd be back within a few hours, and Kathy brought all the kids to play at nearby Alpine Park. But the hours passed, and Beverly did not return to pick up her children. Finally, at 4 o'clock, Kathy became worried that something bad had happened, so she called Beverly's husband, Dal England, and let him know what was going on. He came and picked up the kids and then drove to Riverside Park, where Beverly had told Kathy she would be going. There he found his wife's car locked with her purse and her shoes inside. Beverly was nowhere to be found, so Dale called the police and filed a missing persons report. A search by the Salida police followed. Now, Riverside Park is called that because it's literally on the side of a river, the Arkansas River to be more specific, and the day Beverly went missing, the river was at the highest level in recorded history. At first, police thought Beverly might have fallen into the river and drowned after discovering that she didn't know how to swim, but a search of the river and surrounding areas turned up nothing, so they figured her body would wash up within a few weeks or as the weather turned cooler, but that didn't happen either. Now, here's the strange thing. I don't believe that the police ever questioned Mitzi Abiata or her husband, Stephen, after Beverly vanished. There's one news article I could find where it says she was briefly questioned, but lawyered up immediately and refused to answer questions. But at first, it seems as if the investigation was conducted almost on the basis of an assumption that something had happened to Beverly, but it was an accident. There'd been no foul play involved. People in the area would sort of side-eye Beverly's husband, Dal England, for quite some time after, because of course, when something like this happens, the first person everyone suspects is the husband, but he was officially cleared by the police department of any connection or wrongdoing. And after the weeks and months passed, the case went cold until September 24th, 1992, when a man named Gil West was hiking into the lower region of Mount Shavano at the southern end of the Arkansas River, about 18 miles away from Riverside Park, where, remember, Beverly's car was found. That is roughly a 40-minute drive. West was looking for scrap metal. He was kind of picking through what they referred to as a trash dump or something, or maybe like a dumping ground. And he happened to come upon skeletal remains that he felt looked to be human, so he called the police. So we have to remember, this is 1992. DNA isn't being used at this time, really, to identify bodies and things like that, especially when they're very decomposed and almost completely skeletalized. At this point, no one made the connection between the remains found and the cold case from 12 years prior. The case of a woman who went missing and was never found just down the river, Beverly, England. The medical examiner actually concluded that these bones were that of a pioneer woman from 100 years before, and once again, nothing happened in the missing persons case of Beverly, England. In 1997, an article about her case printed in the Mountain Mail called it Salida's Best Mystery and talked about the 2 children that Beverly had left behind. Brisha had grown up and gotten married, had 3 children of her own. Cal had become a police officer, mostly Beverly because of what had happened to his mother. He also had 2 children. They had never forgotten their mother, however, or her mysterious departure, and they'd always felt that someone had done something to her. They knew that their mother wouldn't have just up and left them. She loved them. She was a good mother. They were young when she left, but they remember that. Still, even with her 2 children holding on to her memory, after this, Beverly would fade from the memories of those in Salida again until September of 2015, when the University of North Texas tested those skeletal remains found at the base of Mount Chavano against DNA provided by Brisha and Cale, confirming that the remains found at the bottom of the mountain were not those of a 100-year-old pioneer woman, but those of Beverly, England. And at this point, things sped up very quickly. As far as I can tell, this is the first time that Mitzi Abiata or her husband Stephen were spoken to by law enforcement and actually answered questions. 35 years had passed. Mitzi and Stephen were still married. Their sons had grown and, moved out. Mitzi and Stephen had left the Salida area and settled in Monte Vista, 80 miles south of Salida. The Chaffee County Times reported on October 9th, 2015, quote, "A daughter's prayers were answered Monday with the announcement that the remains of Beverly, England, had been found and identified. Brisha Patterson, England's daughter, never gave up hope that her mother would be found after she disappeared 35 years ago on June 12, 1980, from Riverside Park in Salida. England's remains were identified in late September at the University of North Texas with a new type of DNA testing, which involves taking DNA samples from her children Brisha and her brother Cale and entering it into a database of Jane Does in hopes of finding a match. Brisha England Patterson, now of Grand Junction, said, "I'm stunned. I'm shocked. I'm feeling all the emotions. It's some sort of relief. Now I pray we can bring justice to whoever did this." Bringing justice to whoever had done this to Beverly, England was exactly what Sheriff John Spetsy of the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office was focused on doing, saying, quote, "We're into a full investigation now. We're taking it day by day, and we just don't know where we're going from here. We may have lost some evidence with the results of time and Mother Nature, but with new technology that is available now, we may also have gained some. We hope to get enough to get a conclusion." End quote. Even better, according to Sheriff Spetsy, they also had people of interest that they were talking to, people they were taking a very serious look at. And one of these people was, of course, Mitzi Abiata. So it appears that finally in 2015, when she was questioned about whether or not she'd seen Beverly, England, the day she went missing, she admitted to police that they had, in fact, met that day, gotten into an argument, at which point Beverly had attacked her with a broken bottle and cut her on the leg, and then Mitzi ran away. Police also questioned those who knew both the Englands and the Abiatas and discovered that Mitzi did, in fact, have a leg injury around the time Beverly went missing, and she'd also been seen with the missing woman earlier that day at a donut shop. But Mitzi refused to cooperate with the police any further. She said no to taking a polygraph exam, and she lawyered up immediately. However, the most damning statements against her came from her own family members. Now remember, Mitzi was 7 months pregnant when she met with Beverly, and this same day that Beverly went missing, Mitzi showed up at the home of her aunt and uncle to ask her uncle if he could help her clean her car. According to her aunt, whose name is Bonnie Parco, when Mitzi arrived, she had blood on her clothes and there was a great deal of blood on the passenger seat of her car. Apparently, Mitzi didn't ask her uncle directly to help her clean blood off her car. Her Aunt Bonnie said, quote, "She just asked him if he would take the seat covers and wash them, so he did because they were going home and she had a little boy and I didn't think the little boy needed to be sitting in blood, going home with that." End quote. Bonnie also went on to say, quote, "Mitzi had blood all over her clothing and she had a cactus on her backside as if she had been dragging something." End quote. So apparently Mitzi also told her Aunt Bonnie the same kind of thing that she would later tell police, that they had gotten into an altercation, that Beverly had attacked her and cut her leg, and that Beverly was threatening to kill her and her unborn child. Something else about Bonnie Parko's statement was she mentioned that Mitzi had a little boy with her. Now, this little boy that Mitzi had with her would have been her first son because she was currently 7 months pregnant with her second son. But the very next day, on June 13th, 1980, Mitzi went into premature labor and was flown to St. Joseph's Hospital to give birth to a little boy named David. Years later, David would tell his wife that his mother had told him he was born premature because of a knife fight she'd gotten into when she was pregnant with him. Mitzi also told her oldest son's girlfriend in 2016, when the case was being reopened, that she was worried she'd soon be going to jail, and she wanted this woman to promise to take care of her son if that happened. After Mitzi shut down and stopped cooperating with police, investigative reporter Rob Lowe went to her house to try and get a statement. She wouldn't come out and talk, but her husband, Stephen, did, and this is what he had to say, quote, "It's an old thing. It's old, what you're looking at," end quote. When asked if he thought his wife was involved with what had happened to Beverly, England, Stephen Abbiata silently walked back into his house. I mean, it's not a no. He didn't tell the reporters or the investigative reporter or whatever. He didn't tell these people, no, my wife has nothing to do with this. This is ridiculous. He simply said it's old. It's 35 years old at this point in 2016. Why are you still looking into this? That's kind of the impression that I got from it. Kind of like, let sleeping dogs lie. This is from a long time ago. Let's not ruin our lives over it now. That's what I got from it. But let's examine the evidence here. The day Beverly went missing, she was meeting with a woman whose husband she'd been having an affair with. At this time, this woman was 7 months pregnant with said husband's child, most likely at a time in her life where she was feeling very territorial over her husband and her family, most likely at a time where she might have done anything to preserve her family unit and make sure her son wasn't going to be born into a broken marriage. Maybe Beverly's promises to end it hadn't been enough to satisfy Mitzi. Maybe Mitzi wanted to make sure that Beverly, England would never pose a threat to her or her family again. I don't think that Beverly was killed at Riverside Park, but she might have been. It could have gone one of two ways. Mitzi could have killed her there, most likely by stabbing her, as she had later told her son she'd been in a knife fight, even though she told the police that Beverly had attacked her with a broken bottle, which most certainly is not a knife. I think that most likely both women met at the park. Maybe Beverly had arrived first, parked her car, took off her shoes. Maybe she was dipping her feet in the river. Or maybe because the river was so high, she was just walking by the river and the ground there was wet and it got her shoes wet. So she took them off. And as she was doing this, Mitzi pulled up. Maybe Mitzi asked Beverly to get into her car so they could talk. So Beverly put her wet shoes into her car with her purse and locked it before getting into Mitzi's car, because it would have been kind of rude, to get into somebody's car with like wet, river, swampy kind of shoes. So she probably would have put them in her car and gone into Mitzi's car without them. At this point, they most likely spoke, which most likely turned into an argument, and maybe Mitzi stabbed her right there in the car in the park, allegedly, because Mitzi is obviously innocent until proven guilty. But we know something most likely happened in the vehicle because of the amount of blood that was later seen by Mitzi's Aunt Bonnie in the passenger seat, right? That's just kind of common knowledge, like common sense. There's a lot of blood in the passenger seat, and that is where Beverly would have been sitting. At that point, with Beverly bleeding out in the car, Mitzi may have drove 40 minutes to Mount Schiavano in order to find an isolated spot to leave Beverly's body. Riverside Park is and was a very popular area for locals and tourists alike, and on a nice spring day, it would probably have been pretty busy. Families all over, kids all over, people picnicking, just hanging out. Mount Schiavano is much more isolated, frequented usually by experienced hikers and the like, but not so much a spot where people would bring their families for a fun and, casual day. There would be less people around. Then, after leaving Beverly, at the mountain, Mitzi drove to her aunt and uncle's house so they could help her clean the blood up. But what sticks out to me is Bonnie claimed Mitzi had a child with her, her older son, and Bonnie didn't want him driving home in a car that had blood in it. Was this child present at the time of Beverly's murder? Was he in the car? Did he see it? He most likely was too young to remember at that time, but still, that's some cold-hearted shit right there. Anyways, the mental stress of confronting the other woman, the physical stress of killing her, allegedly, and then disposing of her body caused Mitzi to go into premature labor and give birth the very next day. We have witnesses who claim Beverly was meeting with Mitzi that day. We have witnesses who saw the two of them together at a donut shop, either before Riverside Park or after the park and before the mountain, because there is a possibility, like I said, that Mitzi didn't do it at Riverside Park and she waited until they had gotten closer to the actual location of where she wanted to leave Beverly's body in order to kill her. So she could have killed her in the car at Mount Shavano. We don't know. But we also have witnesses who said Mitzi and her car were covered in blood the same day Beverly went missing and ended up dead. Mitzi herself has admitted to having an altercation with Beverly that morning, most likely meaning she was the last person to see her alive. And later, when the case reopened, Mitzi was worried she'd be going to jail. An innocent person with, 35 or 40 years between you and the actual crime is not going to be so worried about going to jail because they didn't do anything. Therefore, the evidence isn't going to be there to actually be able to prosecute them and charge them with anything. Additionally, investigators returned to the scene where Beverly's remains were found in 1992, and there was new evidence recovered, including a vehicle that police believe was used in the 1980 murder. Cal England, Beverly's son, was quoted in a KDVR article from 2016 saying, quote, "I believe that they will end up making an arrest off of this," end quote. And his sister Brisha said, quote, "It's pretty important because me and my brother have done the time for this crime for the last 35 years, and somebody has gone on living their life with this nasty secret." End quote. After more extensive searches with the FBI sifting through dirt at the base of the mountain for 5 days, more skeletal remains were found. Sheriff Spetsy said, quote, "It proved to be very successful in that numerous human remains believed to be that of Beverly England, along with several items believed to be associated with her death, were recovered and collected as evidence. All the human remains that were recovered will now be sent to pathology at the University of Northern Texas, where they will be analyzed for identification. There were several remains that displayed possible damage, and this could possibly reveal the cause of her death," end quote. So when he says that they found more bones that they're going to have tested and also items they believe to be connected to her death, I wonder if he means the murder weapon, the knife allegedly that was used to kill Beverly England. Because if Mitzi, or whoever did this allegedly, was going to leave Beverly's body somewhere hoping it would never be found, obviously she wouldn't leave her body someplace thinking, oh, I can't wait for this to be found. She's going to put it someplace that she thinks nobody is going to find it. She may have also thrown the murder weapon down in there with her, thinking that it was never going to be found. Unfortunately, in November of 2016, the then Chaffee County District Attorney Molly Chilson declined to bring the case to the grand jury, much to the dismay of Sheriff Spetsy and all of Chaffee County law enforcement, who felt they had built a strong case and they had enough evidence to bring it to the grand jury. In emails to investigator Andy Rorick dated July 8th and to Sheriff Spetsy himself dated July 28th, Molly Chilson said there was not enough funding for a grand jury trial, nor did she believe that there was enough evidence to bring it to the grand jury. This is what she wrote. Quote, "We do not expect commissioners to grant the funding, so when we get closer to the expiration of our 90-day extension, I will have to make a filing decision without a grand jury," end quote. And that filing decision she made was to not pursue the case, to not bring it to a grand jury, to not prosecute the case. She also claimed, when she got some bad press from this, that the police department didn't need her to sign off on an arrest warrant. The police could arrest somebody on their own, but ultimately it would still be up to her to determine whether or not there was sufficient evidence or sufficient funding to proceed with the case, and she did not believe there was. Sheriff John Spetsy was not shy about publicly expressing his frustration with Molly Chilson, and Beverly's daughter Brisha also held back no punches when she said she believed the now 65-year-old Mitzi Abayata knows what happened to her mother, saying, quote, 38 years is a long time, and every day, every minute, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm angry. Why is this lady not in handcuffs? Why is she not behind bars? Why are we not in court?" end quote. However, this past year has brought new hope for those who are pushing to have arrests made in this case and see justice given to the England family. In May of 2019, Molly Chilson made the announcement that she intended to resign, and Beverly's family, along with Sheriff Spetsy, believe that there might be a breakthrough if Governor Jared Polis appoints someone to the position who has the guts to take the case and to pursue it.
And in recent years, investigators complained the 11th Judicial District Attorney failed to act in the case. Our Matt Kroschel has been following this case for years. And Matt, now that DA Molly Chilson is resigning.
And the sheriff here telling us that he feels like a new set of eyes at the district attorney's office could mean this case will move forward, a case he already feels is ready to prosecute.
I get to go spend my Mother's Day and my birthday up on Chavano with her.
39 years ago, Brisha Patterson's mom, Beverly England, vanished.
This is the last place where your mom was seen alive. Is that hard to be here, to be in this space?
It is. Yeah, I come down here a lot, and I just wonder, you know.
The case went cold, and then 3 years ago, a major break.
Just feel like the prosecutor's office wasn't on board with it.
The FBI brought in, and last year, they searched the area where her remains were found.
And now we actually have more than we had years and years ago. There's still nothing really done.
The sheriff says he believes this case is ready for a jury. Investigators have a prime suspect.
You know, it seems, I mean, unfortunately, we kind of hit a stalemate with the district attorney's office. We thought we were going to a grand jury at one time, and then, you know, as everybody knows, we didn't.
Current district attorney Molly Chilson had blocked moving the case any further.
It was devastating, very devastating. I mean, we had our hopes up, and the same person that gave us those high hopes squashed them. And I don't know why she did or whatever, but now maybe we at least have a chance.
With her resignation, Sheriff Spetsy and this family are again hopeful. I spoke with Molly Chilson on the phone today. She didn't want to talk about this case in particular, but she says her leaving the office has nothing to do with any particular case or criticism of the way she's handled her job, a job she's proud to say she is proud of the way she did.
As of now, I can't find any new updates from, this year, 2020, on whether or not they've decided to make an arrest or to try this case. But I honestly have no doubt that there will be an eventual outcome of a trial, because Beverly has a lot of people, including her 2 children and Sheriff John Spetsy, who are fighting for her. And Sheriff John Spetsy was about, I think, 20 when, Beverly went missing, and he's been following this case and was interested in it, pretty much his whole adult life. So he's very invested in finding out what happened and bringing whoever's responsible to justice. Now, again, we say allegedly Mitzi Abayata was responsible for this, allegedly. We say that because she technically hasn't been charged with anything, and we can't just come right out and say that somebody's guilty. I can say to you, though, that I think she's guilty. I can say to you that I 100% believe that this woman had something to do with what happened to Beverly. I can even say that I don't know for sure she worked alone, because once again, she was 7 months pregnant. That's a lot of activity for a woman who's 7 months pregnant, to fight with another woman, to end up the victor in this fight, to move her body and leave it somewhere. And clearly her aunt, Bonnie, thinks that Mitzi dragged something, as she said, because there was like a cactus or something stuck to her butt. So it looked like she had kind of been like going through rough terrain and dragging something, and she was filthy and covered in blood. Most likely she was covered in blood from when she was, I guess, potentially moving Beverly's body. But did she work alone? That's another question that we have to ask. We also have to ask, did her husband Stephen know what she did? I cannot imagine that she has hid this from him for 40 years. But of course, she possibly did hide it from him, but he doesn't seem to be proclaiming loudly that he believes his wife is innocent. He's not in front of the cameras getting upset and saying, this is a travesty of justice. Why are we being harassed after 40 years? Why is my wife being dragged back into this? You have no evidence. He's kind of staying out of the limelight, and so is she. They lawyered up. They don't want to cooperate with police. They're not answering questions. That is suspicious if you have nothing to hide, especially with 40 years between you and the crime, in my opinion. But I personally think that she had something to do with it, and I also think there's probably a 50% chance that she didn't work alone. And now I want to hear what you have to think about this case. Do you think Mitzi is responsible? Do you think there's any way Mitzi is not responsible? Do you think that eventually they're going to end up bringing this case to trial, even though it's been so long? Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you like this video if you liked it. Make sure you subscribe if you've been watching for a while and you like what you see and you haven't subscribed yet. Go ahead and press that subscribe button. Halloween's coming up. It's going to be awesome. We're going live Wednesday night, September 30th, so that we can talk about Halloween and I can kind of give you guys a little insight into what's happening. Share this video if you think it's worth sharing and you want to get some awareness out there about this case. And also remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you feel like it. The handles are in the description box. Thank you so much to Magellan TV for sponsoring this video. Thank you guys so much, all of you, for coming back and watching my videos time and time again. I'm so appreciative. You will never even understand. And thank you to my patrons who are always there for me and always have my back. I appreciate you guys so much. Stay kind. Stay beautiful, and I'll see you at Halloween. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. Oh, these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly.